The college football season has finally concluded. We are now 107 days away from the NFL draft. I am counting. Ryan Wilson is probably counting because I believe this is his 19th draft. He will correct me here in a second if I am wrong. So the top two have not changed, but right below that, DeVonta Smith, according to Ryan Wilson, now going number 3 overall to the Dolphins. We are going to dive into the entirety of Ryan Wilson's mock draft. All right, welcome in. I'm Amanda Garrett. That is Brady Quinn. You were at the game last night. Congratulations. And then, of course, we are joined by, you were doing your job.
For being there?
Yeah, you know, whatever. I mean, we weren't there. I wasn't there. Ryan wasn't there. So, you know, congrats.
Congratulations. I was at the game till 1:30. Now I'm here today working.
Yes, you're doing your job, as our boss would say. Good, you should be. All right, we are going to start at the very top. Ryan, we'll hear from you in a second there. But let's start because he still has Trevor Lawrence there at the top. We saw two very good quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Mac Jones last night. Anyway, at all, anybody can compete with Trevor Lawrence for that #1 spot.
No, I don't think so. And it was a great performance by Mac Jones. It was a career high. He's never had a game like that. He did it on the biggest stage, so credit to him. And I think there was some, a narrative that when you look at Justin Fields and his overall ability as a quarterback, both running the football and what he could potentially be as a pocket passer, that maybe some teams would look at what he did versus Clemson when he took on Trevor Lawrence and the Tigers, and maybe he could, vie for that #1 spot. Even if he would have coupled that performance up in the national championship game with a very similar performance, I still don't think he'd be the #1 overall pick. It's Trevor Lawrence and then everyone else. Look at the body of work. Look at this young man as a signal caller. He has all the tools and intangibles you're looking for, the accuracy, the arm strength, the athleticism. He's got the experience, especially on a big stage. The thing I love about him is his footwork. He's a guy that gets a lot of accolades for the way he runs, but it's the way he moves within the pocket to still throw. He's got a strong understanding of what the offense is trying to do and what he's trying to attack on the defense. He's the complete package.
I'm wondering, are they going to make him cut his hair? You had to go through that, right?
No, nowadays they don't have rookie hazing anymore, Amanda. That's not something that the NFL condones.
We'll just keep it quiet there. All right, let's keep moving on to #2, the Jets. Penei Sewell. Ryan, you've had him here. Do you see this changing at all in maybe one of your upcoming mock drafts?
Well, when is DeVonta Smith going to go up there? When is he going up to #2?
He's going to be there at some point.
It's coming. And by the way, no one ever had to ask me to cut my hair for anything, so don't worry about it. I'm good. So Penei Sewell's a layup, and Amanda and you and I talked about this earlier in HQ. I think plan A for the Jets would be to trade down from this pick if they're not sold on any of the quarterbacks. And it sounds like they're thinking about rolling with Sam Darnold. Of course, we'll find out more when they get a head coach, and that will probably ultimately decide what the head coach and Joe Douglas, GM, want to do. But should they stay put, I think Penei Sewell makes the most sense because he's so incredibly athletic. He's young. He hasn't played a ton of football, but the football he has played, he's played at a really high level. They took Mekhi Becton last year. He plays left tackle now. Penei Sewell played left tackle at Oregon, but he had never played left tackle before getting to college. So he has experience at right tackle. Mekhi Becton has college experience at right tackle. So you can find a way to go both these guys on the field and immediately upgrade an offensive line that makes Sam Darnold's life that much easier. So I think, this seems pretty easy to me if you're not in love with any of the quarterbacks, but I would try to trade down first of all. And if not, get Penei Sewell and circle back around to the bottom of the first round with the other first-round pick and try to help out that offense some more.
We find the Miami Dolphins at #3. And yes, DeVonta Smith has moved up and up and up Ryan Wilson's mock draft. Here he is at #3, going to the Dolphins. He will be reunited with Tua. Do you like this? And how much are people, given what we've seen from DeVonta Smith, going to grapple between that and Jamar Chase?
Well, first off, yes, I love it if he's going to replicate the performance we saw in the first half of this national championship game. I mean, it was ridiculous. He didn't have to do much more work in the second half after the damage that he did, but the Heisman Trophy winner put together a historic season. And look, what are his strengths? Obviously, he's got the top end speed. He's got the ability to get yards after the catch. He's got strong hands. He'll elevate to go make a play on the football, but he's also not afraid to go across the middle. So he encompasses all of that, and he can help you out on special teams. He is a special talent, a special player. The only knocks is obviously his size. He's slight of frame. How's that going to play out when he's run blocking? He seems to be a willing run blocker and a good enough run blocker at the college level. It's different at the NFL level. And then what is his 40 combine speed? I don't know that he's going to compare as favorably to a guy like Jalen Waddle, but I do think he's going to be somewhere in that 4.4 range. And so that's going to be enticing for a lot of people. Bottom line with DeVonta Smith is you don't have to turn on the tape. You know what you're going to get. It's tremendous. He checks every box. It really comes down to how you feel about him projecting moving forward as being a top 5 wide receiver. And there's a long list of guys you can throw in that conversation. Guys like a Calvin Johnson, for example, and you go through the years, you see they all tend to be bigger bodied wide receivers, bigger than a 6'1", 175-pound frame. And so that's going to be more the question is, does a team feel comfortable taking him in this spot, knowing that he's not quite as big of a presence as some of the other receivers that we've seen taken in the top 5?
And he is 6'1", 175. They do call him the Slim Reaper for a reason. All right, let's move on to number 4. Ryan Wilson, you have them taking Zach Wilson going to the Falcons. Now, earlier I spoke to you, and if I'm not mistaken, you said that you think Mac Jones, outside of Trevor Lawrence, could be the best quarterback in this class, ready to go next season. So why Wilson here, and is that going to change?
I know some teams like Mac Jones a lot. I don't. Certainly every team doesn't. And Zach Wilson might be an option for the Falcons. His athleticism is off the charts. His arm strength is really good. He moves around well behind the line of scrimmage. He can run with the ball. He makes really good decisions. We saw all these things in every one of BYU's games, and it certainly got your attention. He came into the year as probably a day 3 guy. He battled some injuries in 2019. Played incredibly well in 2020, and he's a first-round talent, no doubt about it. Now, the question's about, okay, he played that BYU schedule. What can we learn from that? Well, we can learn that Jordan Love played the same schedule, virtually the same schedule last year at Utah State, except he played really poorly. He was the first-round pick at the bottom of the first round. So if the Falcons like Zach Wilson, and they're going to have to bring Matt Ryan back for at least 1 more year with this contract, but let Zach Wilson learn by watching. Bring him back around in 2022, and you have your quarterback. If they don't like him, they can certainly go another direction. They can go a cornerback or edge rusher, but it may be too high to take either of those 2 positions, and maybe trade down as another option. But I have them staying here right now and taking their quarterback of the future.
I think it's interesting, the decision that the Atlanta Falcons are faced with, because this is a pretty big monumental moment in your first draft with a new general manager, a new head coach, to then be selecting a quarterback that might not even play in his rookie year. So I do wonder how that factors into the decision making when you've got a guy like Matt Ryan, yes, for a high cap number, but a guy who could be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Do you stay with him at quarterback, be there for a year, have some success, and then maybe look to the following year to find your solution at quarterback for the future? Because, I mean, look at some of these guys playing right now. They're playing into their 40s, still at a high level. I think Matt Ryan can do that for the Atlanta Falcons. So I do wonder if they don't go best player available, not necessarily a quarterback.
Let's move on to number 5, the 5th overall selection. Ryan, you have Florida tight end Kyle Pitts headed to the Chargers. Last week you had him to the Chargers at 13. Now you have him 5th overall to the Bengals. So why so much of a jump?
I like him as a top 10 player, and you were right, Amanda. I've done 19 mock drafts now, so I like to mix things up a little bit just to avoid the sheer boredom of doing it for me and the readers. So I have him going to the Bengals here at number 5. I asked our buddy John Breach, lifelong Bengals fan, what he thought about this pick, and he sort of hemmed and hawed. He said, I don't know if fans will love it because there's so many other needs. And yeah, ideally Penei Sewell would be there for the Bengals. Maybe they think about trading up for Penei if he falls to 3 or 4. But there's nothing wrong with getting Joe Burrow another weapon. Kyle Pitts reminds me a lot of Darren Waller. Back in the day, Andy Dalton had a ton of success with Zach Ertz as sort of a security blanket before injuries derailed Zach Ertz's career. And I think that's the type of production, even more so, in fact, that we could get from Kyle Pitts, who had a wonderful season this year. He left school because there was nothing else for him to accomplish. And at the end of the day, we could be talking about this in 5 or 6 years. He actually ends up being the best wide receiver pass catcher that came out of this draft class.
Ryan, let's move on to the 6th overall pick. It will be the Eagles as of right now. In case anything changes, we'll see during the draft. This is where we find Jamar Chase. So DeVonta Smith is your first wide receiver off the board. Or excuse me, this is where we find Jamar Chase. Yes, I'm just losing my mind today, apparently. So this is the selection that the Eagles really, really wanted. Is this the best guy in this spot?
Well, if they'd won that game in Week 17, Amanda, they would have picked 9th. So they did everything in their power, and it ended up on some level costing Doug Peterson his job to get to the number 6 pick. And wide receivers a need, without a doubt. But now, with so much upheaval in the organization, it's unclear which direction they want to go. It appears Carson Wentz won the power struggle. So if they're rolling with Carson Wentz, then Jamar Chase makes all the sense in the world. If there's still questions about Carson Wentz, quarterback could be on the board here. So it's hard to figure out, especially without having a head coach. But I'm taking Jamar Chase for now. Brady's talked about this as well. Jamar Chase and DeVonta Smith are 1 and 1A in terms of how you view this wide receiver class. He's a special player. He was the best wide receiver in the LSU team last year that won the national title. That also included Justin Jefferson and Terrace Marshall. And I think this certainly helps that offense. You have to get Carson Wentz right if he's your guy. If not, maybe we are talking about a quarterback here at 6.
All right, Lions up at 7. Now, Ryan, you have not moved this selection in back-to-back weeks. He has them taking Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons. Brady, what do you think about this?
Well, look, they've actually invested in the linebacker position a number of times. Whether you go back 2017, the first round, they took Jared Davis out of Florida. You can make a case whether that's worked out or not. Then you can look at Tavai in the second round in 2019 draft. So they've invested into this position. Now, this might be a pick where you say, you've got whoever the new head coach is going to be coming in for the Lions. He wants to take the best overall prospect, and Micah Parsons is one of the top 10 prospects in this year's draft. And so you're not going to go wrong taking a guy who's going to come in and have an immediate impact on your defense. You look at the frame at 6'3", 245 pounds. For that size, though, he's athletic enough to be able to cover backside of the backfield or the tight ends. He's a good blitzer off of the edge. And he's got that sideline-to-sideline speed you're looking for. So just a rare combination of talent and size that you get from Micah Parsons. The biggest question becomes some of the off-the-field concerns that you have with him, the character issues, those sorts of things, and the fact that he sat out the 2020 season. We talked about Jamar Chase with the previous pick. That's the big question mark, is how are these teams going to handle guys who didn't even decide to play? Are they going to look at it and say, well, he's a linebacker in this case, that's not as much wear and tear? Or are they going to be more concerned about him taking a year off of football and getting a sense for what they're going to get out of this prospect? But we've got a number of guys right now in the top 10 who did decide to opt out this year and are looking towards the future. So I guess we're going to find out when the draft comes.
Ryan, another pick you have not moved, that would be Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech, going number 8 overall to the Panthers. He does remain your CB1, still ahead of Alabama's Patrick Surtain, which Brady does not agree with, as you see here. So why did the Panthers, and why not Surtain above him still?
I like Caleb Farley a little better. For me, that's 1 and 1A. There's not that much different. And again, to follow up on Brady's comments about Micah Parsons and even Jamar Chase, Caleb Farley didn't play this year. He opted out as well. He opted out because family concerns, and I get all that. People can opt out for certainly for reasons that are personal to them. But I talked to some scouts that had no issue at all with Caleb not playing this year. There were some immaturity issues that most people think he's worked through, so I don't think that's a concern. But he's tall, he's physical, he's strong, he's a playmaker, he's a former wide receiver, so he has the ball skills. You see that there, and I think he has a chance to be special. It's hard. I mean, we talk about quarterbacks in terms of trying to predict if they're going to be good or not. That's difficult. Quarterback is up there too. It's hard to figure out how these guys are going to translate. But based on what you see with the physical skills and the play on the field, and he hasn't played a lot, for being honest, I like him just slightly better than Surtain.
All right, I know Brady has an opinion on this because we're going to get right now to it, because right behind Farley, you do have the Broncos taking number 9 overall Patrick Surtain. So you'd seen his tape. You got to see him play in person last night. So should he be ahead of Farley?
Yeah, I think so, in my opinion. And reason being is he checks off every single box that you're looking for in a cornerback. I mean, he's got the prototypical size and length. He has the speed, and in particular the recovery speed. If he does get beat, he does a good job of getting what means back into phase to the wide receiver, making a play on the football. He has good ball skills. He's got a high football IQ. You can see that in the way he goes about anticipating breaks based on where a wide receiver lines up in his split, or even how he takes off the football. So he really is the complete package. Based on what they asked him to do at Alabama, he shouldn't have any issue whatsoever transitioning to the NFL level. And let's not forget, too, his father was an all-pro caliber player. He checks that box for lineage. I can promise you this. NFL scouts and talent evaluators at the next level, they love it when they get to have a son of a former player, because they know that he's going to understand how to conduct himself as a professional player when he gets his opportunity. So this would be the number 1 cornerback, in my opinion, this year's draft class, as evidence of that this past national championship game. And also, by the way, it's a good scheme fit for what Vic Fangio is going to ask him to do in the Denver Broncos defense. He's going to be on an island. He's going to have to isolate himself, very similar to what he's done at Alabama for the most part.
And you mentioned his dad. He did get to play in front of his dad last night. Was very excited about that, who was drafted by the Dolphins in 1998. All right, rounding out the top 10, this is where we find the Dallas Cowboys taking Rashawn Slater. Now, Ryan, last week you had him at 14 going to the Vikings, so why now to the Cowboys?
Rashawn Slater isn't a sexy pick because he's an offensive lineman. Another guy who opted out, by the way, but he fills a huge need for the Cowboys, who could also go edge rusher here and even cornerback if they wanted to. But Rashawn Slater plays left tackle at Northwestern. He has short arms. That's going to be the talking point. The great news is you can kick him inside the guard. He's been working during the offseason for him, which has started in September, at center as well. So he's versatile in terms of where you play him in the offensive line. He can be that swing tackle on game days. But I think he has starter potential, and he's my number 2 offensive lineman based on that versatility, but also because he played left tackle at a really high level. A few years ago, we talked about Jonah Williams having short arms, or whether he was an offensive tackle or not. He got injured, didn't play his rookie season. He played pretty well this year until he suffered another injury. I feel just as confident about Rashawn Slater, maybe more so, that he'll be able to make that transition to the next level, no matter how long or short his arms are.
Brian, you said he was not a sexy pick. My producer, Jack, has repeatedly told me to tell you that big guys can be sexy too, Ryan Wilson. That's it. That's Jack. There you go, Jack. There's your answer. All right. That is your top 10. Still to come on HQ. We have not seen one name. Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. Will he be ahead or behind of Mac Jones? Got to stick around to find out. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ on this Monday. We are going through the entirety of the first round of Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, his 19th mock draft. We just did 1 through 10 there. Trevor Lawrence, Penei Sewell going 1 and 2 overall. That has not changed. What did change was DeVonta Smith moving up to 3, going to the Dolphins, reuniting with Tua Tagovailoa, and then the Falcons taking Zach Wilson at 4 is interesting. Jamar Chase going to the Eagles at 6. All right, let's pick this back up. That is Brady Quinn, Ryan Wilson. I'm Amanda Guerra. Let's go to the 11th overall pick, Ryan Wilson. The Giants, you have them taking Kwity Paye. Now, this is down a little bit from last week, so tell us why he fits here.
They can take offensive line help here as well. We've already had a couple guys go off the board. So they take the first edge rusher in Kwity Paye, who's a fantastic athlete who is only going to get better. He's about 6'4", I think 277. So his measurables physically are eye-popping when you see him. And when you see him play, even more so. The Giants had no edge rush to speak of. Down the stretch, it was a huge issue. And part of the reason they struggle when they need to win those football games. So I think Kwity Paye comes in and he immediately gives you edge rush help. I think Giants fans would agree that that's a need alongside the offensive line issues and perhaps finding some help at wide receiver. But where Kwity Paye goes here at 11, I think there's some real value there. And I think he's going to be a guy that may start slow, but once he gets more comfortable in terms of reps and more experience, which he hasn't had a lot of at Michigan, he's going to be a really good player.
12 things get a little interesting here, Ryan Wilson. The 49ers, you have them selecting Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. Now, Brady, Ryan doesn't necessarily think he will be here, but if he is here still, Kyle Shanahan has a lot of decisions to make.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense if that's how this plays out, where, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both feel like he's too good to pass up on, being at this spot. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't think Jimmy Garoppolo can take them to another Super Bowl when healthy for 16 games, but they do need to have someone who can come in and help replace him and keep this team afloat, or eventually be the future of this team if they still have their doubts about Jimmy Garoppolo's upside. So Justin Fields, to me, I think he goes somewhere in the top 5. You're going to find it hard to find the combination of athleticism, size, arm strength. He's put together some solid games. There has been some inconsistencies, though, and I think in comparison to the other quarterbacks in this year's draft class in particular, this year, he struggled at times. There's no way of describing it, outside of the Indiana Northwestern game. He struggled, and even in the national championship game, he didn't look his best, but also he's dealing with a rib injury and some other things that were going on. So I still think he's going to be the second quarterback taken because of his upside. The reality is, though, is he a scheme fit here? Yes, but that's because it's Kyle Shanahan. It didn't matter if it was RG3 back with the Washington at the time, Washington football team now. Whether it was RG3 or Kirk Cousins, he put together a game plan and a scheme that allowed him to be successful. So I think you do the same thing here if Fields drops to them at 12. It would just be a bit surprising because I do think they need some depth at some other spots. They could get a few more playmakers, too, on offense.
All right, according to this mock draft, so far we have 3 quarterbacks off the board, and Trevor Lawrence 1 overall, Zach Wilson going to the Falcons, and now Fields to the 49ers. Let's go to the 13th overall pick. That would be the Chargers. And Ryan, you are finding them a replacement for Melvin Ingram.
That's right. Melvin Ingram's contract's going to be up. They have Joey Bosa, of course. So I haven't taken Jayson Oweh out of Penn State. Here's the thing. I talked to some scouts who think Jayson Oweh has a chance to be better than Yetur Gross-Matos, who played alongside Jayson Oweh in 2019, the edge rusher, who ended up going to the second round to Carolina and had a really good rookie season. Oweh is still learning the position. He didn't start playing football until he was a teenager. You see there, he's 6'5", 253. I've heard people describe the way he plays is as someone who's 6'2", who thinks he's 6'2", 220, when in fact, he can absolutely take over games. So he's raw, and that's okay. You can grow into the role. You can take a guy, and teams do it all the time. They take players based on how they project them to be in 2 or 3 or 4 years, not how they're going to be tomorrow. And I think Oweh gives you that. They need help on the back end. They could obviously go with a secondary member here, or maybe even the offensive line. But I think Jayson Oweh fills a need immediately and has a chance to get some spot duty and to get after the quarterback next season.
Brady, if I'm not mistaken, last week, I believe you and Ryan got into it over Greg Rousseau. You were very disappointed where he had him going. So, Ryan, last week you had him going at 26th. He has now moved him up to going 14th overall to the Vikings. What do you think about that?
Look, I think the hard thing is when you look at this mock draft so far, what is it, 5 players that we've got, Ryan, that opted out for this season, maybe 5 or 6 at least so far, that we've got right now in the top 14 picks. And that's a bit concerning because we don't know how teams are going to evaluate tape that was 2 years ago and what they're going to think of these guys, especially if they don't look good either at the combine, at the pro day, or some of the private workouts, but not knowing how those are going to go on. But Greg Rousseau, as far as the total package, he's a guy like Oweh, who was just taking a pick ago, has a ton of upside, right? He's kind of new to this position. But when you look at his length, his athleticism, his ability to bend, which is always a key term you're going to hear in regards to those edge rushers, he checks all of those boxes. And I do think he's still got some room to put on some additional mass and develop, his technique as far as speed to power, his counter back inside, his hands, all those things you look for. But he, to me, is going to be the best edge rusher, the first edge rusher taken in this year's draft.
Let's go to the 15th overall pick. That would be the New England Patriots. By all means, we do know they need a quarterback. Now, Ryan, last week you had them taking Mac Jones. In this particular mock draft, we have still not seen Mac Jones. This week, you have the Patriots taking North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance. So, Brady, your opinion on this?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the only concern you have is you only got 1 year of tape really to go based off of. And if he goes in and he's not ready to take over a system with Josh McDaniels, which is, it puts a lot on the quarterback's plate. You're responsible for calling out the mic identification, which sets up the run blocking or pass protection, and then really audibling and get your team in the best possible play. Will he be able to handle that going at the NFL level? Does Josh McDaniels want to deal with that as his play caller? So that's going to be the biggest question. But when you turn on the tape, he reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott. I've said this before. He's a guy who can hurt you with his legs, but he's pretty accurate with the football too, and has a big enough arm to make all of the throws. So, he could potentially be a scheme fit here, but I think this is a player too that with really only 1 year of playing, especially at a lower level, he may need some development. So that's the concerning thing with the Patriots taking him, is can they be patient with him? Does Bill Belichick want to be patient with him?
All right, let's go to the 16th overall pick. That would be the Arizona Cardinals. Ryan, somebody else who's a little bit young, you have them taking Tyson Campbell out of Georgia.
Yeah, Tyson Campbell is probably one of my favorite players in this draft class. He's so much fun to watch. And one of the things when you talk to folks around the league about SEC players, all of them, they're going up against other high caliber SEC players, many of whom will have chances to play in the NFL. And that automatically gives you some feedback about how they play in big moments. And Tyson Campbell shows up in every big moment. Sometimes, yes, sure, he's not always going to make plays, but that's the life of an NFL cornerback. But he's long, he's 6'2", he could probably stand to add a few pounds. But when you watch him in his back pedal and then when he drives on the ball, he is so unbelievably fluid, and that's what gets your attention. You're not going to beat him down the field in terms of outrunning him to a point, on a deep ball. So there are a lot of reasons to like his game, and I think he's going to be make a really good transition from college to the NFL. It may take some time, but his physical tools are all there to make that happen.
Ryan, another guy who's not getting quite as much attention, you have him going 17th overall to the Raiders, and he made a big jump from your mock draft last week. This is edge rusher Aziz Ojolari, also out of Georgia. Last week he had him 28th overall, now 17th. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these edge rushers shake out in terms of how NFL teams view them. Ojolari doesn't blow you away with any one thing, but he does a lot of things really well. He never gets pushed off the ball. He can set the edge in the run game, and a lot of times with these edge rushers, they do one thing well, whether it's rush the passer or whether it's stop the run, but sometimes they struggle to do both. So he's able to do both. He can come in right away. I mean, he would make sense for a team like the Steelers who pick later in the draft because they need help at edge rusher, but it makes certainly sense for a Raiders team that struggled week after week to generate any sort of pass pressure. They have Max Crosby, who's played well, but Cleve Farrell, their number 4 overall pick previously, hasn't really turned that corner yet. And I think Aziz Ojolari gives them one more player on the edge to sort of jumpstart that pass rush.
All right. Let's go to 18. Again, this is where things start getting a little bit interesting. Ryan is basically playing GM for the Dolphins at this point, and they're going to be called the Miami Crimson Tide because he has them taking Najee Harris overall. So you get DeVonta Smith, you get Najee Harris, you have Tua. You've basically recreated the Alabama Crimson Tide from about 2017 there. And he texted me earlier. I said, Ryan, you like this? He goes, no more excuses, Tua, all caps, if this were to happen, Brady.
Well, here's the thing. This is an investment really into Tua. Obviously the players too, but you're trying to get in some help. So you get a dynamic playmaker on the outside. You get a running back who isn't only going to just be able to run the football, and he's a change of pace back compared to what they already have on the roster, but he's also a guy who can catch the football out of the backfield and do something with it. And he's NFL ready. You know, he's good in pass protection. So I like these 2 picks, especially after the words of Chris Grier, who's saying Tua's our starter for 2021. And so why not give him guys that, you know, especially if our offseason is going to be condensed due to still, you know, COVID restrictions, he's very familiar with. I mean, if you don't remember, before last night when Alabama won the national championship, the last time they won one was when Tua Tagovailoa in overtime hit DeVonta Smith in the back of the end zone for a touchdown to beat Georgia. Now you pair him up with a guy like Najee Harris, too, in the backfield. This could be a matchmaking for years to come between these star players.
That's exactly right. And that's what you hope for Tua, because he struggled this year. Who cares? He was a rookie. A lot of things to sort of work through in a pandemic season. But look, he's going to have playmakers around him. They struggled at wide receiver at times, at least in terms of depth. The running back situation was certainly fluid throughout the year with injuries and sort of lack of production. And I think Najee Harris brings that right away. And oh, by the way, he's really good in terms of catching passes out of the backfield. We know Tua loved checking it down as a rookie. He'll push the ball down the field more often, hopefully in year 2. But Najee is that security blanket in case the downfield wide receivers are covered. You know, it's weird in 2021 to say that a running back is going to go in the top 20. He may end up at the end of the day, Najee Harris, going higher than this. I think he's that good and that valuable and a guy that can contribute right away.
The big thing is what his 40 time is. You know, if he can run just a 4.59, that'll go a long way for him. If he's in the 4.6s, it won't steer too many people off him because his tape looks great, and he's a great character, high character guy. So teams are going to be impressed by that. But if he can just get in the 4.5s, I think that's going to be enough for him to solidify himself being somewhere in the first round.
Ryan, I appreciate you listening to me a couple weeks ago, and Brady, when you didn't even have him in the first round, so you're welcome. All right, let's go to the Washington football team at 19. Hats off to Taylor Heinicke and Alex Smith. They still need a long-term answer at quarterback. Ryan Wilson, you liked Mac Jones before. You ended up really liking him last night, especially his post-game celebration made you feel a little good. So tell us about Mac Jones. There it is. There's the picture. Ryan, why'd you like this so much?
Man, look at that. That guy is 48 years old. He just got off work, and he's having a stogie to celebrate. Oh, no, he's 23. He's the quarterback of a national championship team. But not only that, he put up some crazy numbers with that body. That, to me, says future Hall of Famer. There, our Pick Six Podcast Instagram crew tweeted out a picture of that photo of Mac Jones next to Tom Brady's combine photo where, by comparison, Tom Brady looks like Brady Quinn did coming out of college. So kudos to Mac Jones for that. But I love Mac Jones' game. I've said this for the entire fall, as long as we've been talking about the mock drafts on HQ. And no, he's not mobile. I get it. He showed a little athleticism last night, by the way. He got hurt, but don't worry about that part. But he makes great decisions with the ball. He knows where to go with it. He gets through his reads. He does a lot of the things that young quarterbacks struggle with. And I think he, in terms of quarterbacks at the next level in this draft class, he's number 2 for me in terms of being NFL ready next year behind Trevor Lawrence. I think the other guys have questions in different arenas. his questions are physical, not mental, and that's why I like him so much.
Mac Jones has maximized his physical ability. When you watch him, I mean, he really does. He really does check all the boxes. He doesn't necessarily have the strongest arm, but he can make all the throws. He is smart. He's got a good sense of timing and rhythm when you watch him when he plays from the pocket. I'm serious. That's not meant to be a slight. It's just we're not expecting him to go into the NFL and improve or get a stronger arm. He's going to be what he is, but he's got plenty to work with there. And the one thing I love about him is people will knock him, say, well, he's not as good of an athlete. He's a lot better athlete than people give him credit. He can run a little bit and pick up a first down. He moves well enough in the pocket, to me, to still make throws like you're going to have to at the next level. So I do think there's going to be a lot of teams that like Mac Jones and what he brings to the table. He's a smart guy, highly competitive, and he's a guy, again, who played his best game on the biggest stage in his only year starting for an entire season. So there's something to be said for that. But you go back through and watch that film. He really does have a sense for how these offenses have to operate with a sense of timing and rhythm, much like you do at the NFL level when he uses his feet and moves through his progressions. That's something that you don't see as much from anyone outside of him and Trevor Lawrence and the rest of this quarterback draft class.
Last year in the draft, we saw a couple surprises with the quarterbacks going a little bit higher than we anticipated. How high do you think we could see Mac Jones go?
I mean, I think you could maybe see him go top 14, somewhere in there. It all depends on, at this point in time, too, in the draft, the mid-late round picks, if someone's going to trade up to take him, right? If someone falls in love with him, they're willing to take him for that. So that's really what it comes down to. Now, as far as this pick, this wouldn't be the place that I would want to go if I'm Mac Jones. I think much like Alabama, he needs more help. He needs to go to a situation where he's got a better offensive line. He's got more tools and weapons out around him to be able to go in and excel. This is a Washington football team that, yes, they have a good defense. He's not going to have to win the game in a ton of shootouts. But the reality is he's not going to see the same separation that he saw with his wide receivers at Alabama.
All right, let's go to the 20th overall pick. That would be the Bears. Now, Ryan, as of right now, you have them taking Elijah Tucker, but I was reading on your article on CBSSports.com, by the way, you can find this entire draft, that you're wondering if they think they need a quarterback or now they don't, given what we saw at the end of the season.
Yeah, you talk to Bears fans, including our good buddy Joe Musso, who's an anchor at CBS Sports HQ. And the worst case scenario for the Bears was to get into the playoffs, because that means the GM, the coach, and maybe Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback, might be coming back. So worst case scenario also because the quarterbacks in this mock draft are already off the board, those with first round grades, and now the Bears are left to decide what to do next. So they could certainly trade up, as Brady's talked about teams may have to do for a quarterback, or they can address other needs if they feel like Mitchell Trubisky is someone they can win with. So Elijah Tucker is a guard, and he was a guard up until 2020 when they had to have him play outside because of need, and he played left tackle, and he was really, really good. NFL teams were blown away at how good he was, and when you talk to some folks, that they like the idea. Yes, wide receiver would be a great need, quarterback would be a great need to fill for the Bears, but Barrett Tucker is a need on the interior offensive line, or you can kick him outside, and that's a great place to start in terms of rebuilding a roster if you're planning to roll with say, Mitchell Trubisky for another year or two.
We've gone 1 through 20 so far. We are not done. Still to come. We did see the return of Alabama wide receiver Jalen Waddle in the national championship last night. So did that do anything for his draft stock? Where will we see him? Stay with us. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, taking a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft here, the one that he did after the national championship. So he does these very late at night, and we give him all the credit for it. This is his 19th one overall. All right, we are through 20. You see there 11 through 20. Justin Fields going to the 49ers if he's still there. Let's jump ahead, though, to 21. Ryan, you have the Colts selecting another talented cornerback in this draft class, J.C. Horn out of South Carolina.
Yeah, J.C. Horn, like Patrick Surtain, had a dad who played in the NFL. Joe Horn was a wide receiver. Of course, I made this mock draft before Anthony Costanzo announced he was going to retire after 10 years. So clearly, offensive line is also a need here. So if you're looking at offensive linemen, Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech could be an option. But they still have needs at cornerback. And, oh, by the way, one more thing about the Costanzo retirement. Costanzo actually said that Quentin Nelson is so good that he has the ability to play left tackle, so something just to keep in mind. But J.C. Horn is a physical corner, and the one thing that maybe he's a little too handsy downfield. You see that a lot with these college cornerbacks because you can get away with it, so we'll have to work on that. But he's physical. He can run with receivers. He is a playmaker in terms of breaking up passes and even getting interceptions now and then. And I think for the Colts, who have needs along the offensive line, as we talked about, also have needs in the secondary. Xavier Rhodes is on last year of his deal. Carey's on the last year of his deal. Safety is also a need here, but there aren't really very much in the way of first-round safeties. Malik Hooker's in the final year of his deal. So secondary help is certainly something on the to-do list for the Colts, and J.C. Horn would not be a bad selection at 21.
All right, at 22, we find the Titans. Now, leading up to the wild card game, I don't think either one of you here with me, because I had to hear over and over and over from Pete Briscoe just how bad the Titans defense is. It's terrible. It's atrocious. Ryan is trying to make some adjustments to that here with Joseph Osai. Brady, your thoughts?
No, it's a good pick, a good selection at the spot. They need edge help. I mean, that was one of the biggest issues is, they were the worst team on third down this season, in part because they couldn't get pressure and they had a hard time covering down. Well, they had a hard time covering down because quarterbacks could sit back and hold the ball all day. Otherwise, they'd have to bring pressure, which leaves you vulnerable on the back end. So Osai is a guy who, when you look at his size, it's a good scheme fit for what Mike Vrabel would like to do there. He's a high-effort guy. He's played a bunch of different positions within the Texas defense, so he's versatile in that respect. But the thing that impresses me most about him is just, he's a complete player in the sense of how he plays the run, how he plays the pass. He's a guy who really stood out on a Texas defense that improved as the year went on, but wasn't really good, to be quite honest with you. So this would be a solid selection. Curious to see how he performs in the combine, but based on his tape, he definitely was an impact player this year.
Let's go to the Jets. At 23, this is their second first-round pick. They took Penei Sewell at 2, according to this particular mock draft. We finally see Jalen Waddle here. So, Brady, you were at the game last night. He did come in for a little bit, so I'm curious your thoughts, how he looked. Did that help or hurt his draft stock? And what do you think about him going to the Jets?
No, it didn't help or hurt. I mean, he barely played. I think, if anything, people were probably impressed by the fact that he was out there and he's limping around. And at one point, I think he caught a 20-yard comeback route when he was limping through the entire break, but he was running fast enough to force Sean Wade to have to drop back and cover the deep third. So he's an impressive young man. I don't know that he'll make it to this point. He could have the Henry Ruggs effect where if he's healthy, if he does run his 40, he's going to potentially be in the 4.2s. And if that's the case, teams are going to be wowed by it when you add the tape on top of that. So he showed toughness. He showed a lot of heart. He had no business being out there with the way he was limping around, but he still chose to be there with his teammates to compete. So look, he's definitely going to the first round. It just depends on how high, and I could see him going somewhere in the top 10, or maybe even being with a team that takes him as the first wide receiver in this draft.
24th pick overall, that belongs to the Steelers, the very sad Steelers. Ryan, who do you have him taking?
Man, I'm a Steelers fan, right? So I can hear you.
No.
I hear what you're saying. So I got to figure out a way for Mac Jones to get to the Steelers. That didn't happen in this mock draft, so I have them addressing the offensive line with Christian Darius, who I mentioned earlier, is a possible target for the Colts now that Costanzo has retired. But this guy's extremely athletic. Sometimes there's some concerns when you talk to folks about his effort from one play to the next in terms of just being focused. But that's why you have coaches. And this is a young player who, by most accounts, is really, really good at his job from one play to the next. So, yeah, guys take plays off sometimes. You coach it out of them, and then you move on. So he may have to kick inside, which is always, it seems like, the conversation you have with scouts talking about offensive tackles. But I love the way he plays. He plays with an edge. He plays to the whistle. He'll run through guys. And that's exactly what the Steelers need. They don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, but Villanueva, the left tackle, probably won't be back. His contract's up. He didn't play well this year. And they also have a need at right tackle. So there's a number of places for Darius to slide into on day one.
No, the Pittsburgh Steelers definitely need help on the offensive line. They got 3 players who are over the age of 30. This is an aging group and one that's not playing as good of football. I don't know if this is the direction that they go. There's a bunch of guys, as far as the tackle position, you could throw into this conversation. It's Penei Sewell and then kind of that next tier of players. But in that next tier, you do have guys like Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame, who had a fantastic season left tackle spot. I had to get a plug in there for him. He went to Notre Dame.
Okay.
Already said that. No, but look, bottom line is, he has played as well as anyone. And when you talk about potentially kicking a guy inside too, Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame is another guy who might find a way in that conversation. But in all seriousness, Alex Leatherwood too, for Alabama. He's a prospect who came back for an additional year. He looked fantastic this year, so he might be another guy who falls in that category of maybe going higher than a lot of people expect. At this spot for Pittsburgh that has a need there.
All right, 25. Let's go back to the Jags, who also have 2 first-round picks. They take Trevor Lawrence, #1 overall. Ryan has them selecting and giving Trevor Lawrence a little bit of help there. Kadarius Toney, wide receiver out of Florida. Brady, how do you like this?
I love it because he's a changeup from what they already have on the roster when you look at the type of receivers that they now are going to be moving forward with. DJ Chark is typically your stretch the field vertical pass catcher, a guy that I think is developing into being that #1 guy. And then you got Laviska Shenault, and he's more of your bigger body, almost reminds me a little bit of Larry Fitzgerald when he was younger as far as his skill set. set. Good hands, contested catch. You're getting the football however you can. Tony is the small, shifty changeup where whether it's a wide receiver screen, a jet sweep pass, or even some of the downfield passes, this young man can get you some yak and get you some big-time plays. So I like this. Again, it's an investment in the quarterback that you took #1 overall, and we saw how Kadarius Toney was able to still be able to carry this Florida Gators passing attack with Kyle Trask with the absence of Kyle Pitts this year.
Cleveland Browns, 26th overall. We're still seeing them fight in the playoffs. And for that, we go back to the national champions, Alabama Crimson Tide. Ryan, you have them taking Christian Barmore, who did have 5 tackles, including 1 sack last night against Ohio State. Brady, what do you think about this?
I love this pick. I actually don't know that there's anyone who helped improve their draft stock more over the college football playoff between the semifinal and the national championship game. 2 sacks, 11 tackles. And you saw the rare ability for him to have that quickness at 6'5", 310 pounds. It's just a rarity, and look, and I know, you love the baby face. I get it. I get it.
Oh my God, we had this beautiful picture of him earlier.
Well, but the bottom line is he's the only defensive tackle Ryan has going in the first round of this draft, and so I don't think he's going to last to this point. I think he'll go sooner because of how economics work, and Ryan can talk to this. Scarcity, okay? When there's not a lot of big-time impact players like what you get in Barmore, typically these guys go maybe even a little bit higher than we're accustomed to because of the drop-off at the subsequent players at that position. So he did himself a huge service. Oh, excuse me. He did himself a huge service this year with the way he played, in particular, in the semifinal and national championship game.
That terrified me
just knocking stuff over here.
All right, we have made it through 26, I believe. We're going to go on to 27 after this, and we're going to talk about, speaking of Notre Dame, a very talented player out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Does Brady agree with where Ryan has him going? Maybe, maybe not. Got to stick around. Welcome back into HQ. Taking a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, his 2021 mock draft, the 19th overall. Last year he did 34. I feel like he's going to surpass that. All right, so you can see some of the selections there. He's taken Joseph Osai, and Brady loves this, going 22 overall to the Titans there. Also, Kadarius Toney going to the Jags, giving Trevor Lawrence a little bit of help. We made it to the end, the final 6 selections. Let's start at 27 with the Bucs. Ryan, who do you have him taking?
Patrick Jones II out of Pittsburgh. So I went into watching Pittsburgh play because of Rashad Weaver, the other edge rusher on the opposite side, and I kept getting distracted watching Patrick Jones, who is incredibly explosive first step. Plays well against the run and the pass. He's a well-built defensive end, so he can do both of those things for you. He's not particularly bendy, and his variety of pass rush moves aren't quite there yet, but he has a lot of potential. And I like the idea of him going to Tampa Bay, playing with Todd Bowles. Should Todd Bowles still remain the coach if he doesn't get a head coaching opportunity? They're losing Shaq Barrett, or at least he's going to be in his free agent year, so they'll have to figure that out. And I think Patrick Jones, we haven't heard a lot of talk about him as a first-round pick. He's probably more likely to go in early on day 2. But there's a lot to like about his game, and when these guys have good sort of pre-draft seasons, and this year will be a little different because of the pandemic, they do go up draft boards, and I think Patrick Jones has the opportunity to do that.
All right, 28, you have the Ravens there, and as of now, Ryan, you have them taking Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, wide receiver there. Now, Ryan noted that he did have an up-and-down year this year, but the year before, it was absolutely stellar. So do you think that he makes it into the first round, and how do you like him going to the Ravens?
I think it might depend upon how he tests, too. If he ends up, running away with the 40, running a low 4.4, maybe breaking into the 4.3s, which I don't know that he has that type of speed, and jumping out of the gym and having really good workouts, then I think it maybe makes you think, all right, there was an up and down year, a lot of inconsistencies. He was a player that had opted out, and then once they came back to play, opted back in. And I do think there are going to be some scouts and evaluators who like the fact that he did that. But there's no doubt. I mean, he didn't have as good of a year, but Tanner Morgan, his quarterback, didn't have as good of a year either. So you can't just put it all on him. They had some injuries on their offensive line that played a part in all this. But he's definitely a talented wide receiver. It's just going to come down to how he performs, and he might be that guy that's right there on the edge of the first round. But I do like the selection here. I think Ryan did a good job of trying to help out Lamar Jackson and getting him a true #1 wide receiver, a guy who's got that bigger catch radius and bigger frame as compared to what they're dealing with right now.
Let's go to the Saints at 29. Ryan, last week you had them taking Najee Harris. That has certainly changed. So who do you have them going with now?
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback on that Najee Harris to the Saints pick. I sort of like that. This week I haven't taken Zaven Collins, the linebacker out of Tulsa. Demario Davis is still there. Quan Alexander is there. That defense is lights out good. But Zaven Collins is a different type of dude. He weighs 260 pounds, plays in the middle of the defense. You can move him around a little bit, and he is off the charts athletic. He moves well laterally. He moves well north to south. He had 2 pick six this year. Now you can say, hey, the Saints need a quarterback. Well, there's none left on the board, so they're going to trade up to get one. They don't have a lot of draft capital or cap space. And oh, by the way, they could also use a wide receiver. But again, Zaven Collins might be the best value pick here at the bottom of the first round. I don't know if he'll be here, for being honest. There's more of a premium on these sort of inside linebacker types in the last 5-6 years based on the way the game has gone. And there's a chance he could be gone by this.
Speaking of value, I want to go to the Bills at 30. Obviously, we're going to them next. But you have them taking Nick Bolton, a Missouri Tiger. And you say he's one of the best players not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, no, who's paying attention to Missouri? I mean, Drew Lock was there. Okay, you watch to see what he would do. Try to say the name Brady. Albert Okui-Boonen was there. Got it. So maybe you watch him as a tight end. But Missouri wasn't a very good football team this year, and that's the reality of it. But one of the first games of the year, they played against Alabama, and Nick Bolton showed up play after play. He showed up last year, too, when you watch the tape. He's undersized compared to Zaven Collins, but he's not undersized by inside linebacker standards at 6'0", 232. Sideline to sideline guy. He is a thumper. He can play a little bit in coverage. He makes plays on the perimeter. I like his game a lot. Again, maybe he goes early day 2, but if you said, hey, he's going to go at the bottom of round 1, he's a good fit in Buffalo next to Tremaine Edmonds. I like it a lot.
I could listen to Ryan Wilson compliment himself on pronunciations all day long. I cannot wait for this year's draft just for that moment when he goes, got it, right after he says it.
You have little flashcards, Ryan, at home?
Yeah, they got it.
Probably. All right, let's go to the Packers at 31st overall. You have them taking a guy that Brady really likes, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So here's the thing. Last week, you had him at 23, so this is a drop for him. Brady, what do you think about the selection?
Oh, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a very versatile player. I mean, he's kind of more of that hybrid safety linebacker spot. I think it could make some sense here for the Packers, in part because one of their weaknesses is stopping the run, and one of the reasons why is because they put so many nickel and dime packages on the field. So look, you could make the case that they could go defensive tackle here to kind of beef up that front and help out that group, or you could try to go with a guy who's good in pass coverage, which gives Mike Pettin kind of what he wants versus the sub personnel, but also a guy who's good at playing against the run out in space, and you know, Coramoa gives you that. So he had a phenomenal year this year. I will not be shocked if he doesn't wow everyone at the combine. The only concern you're going to have is, you know, for his size. He's a bit undersized if you expect him to play in the box in between the tackles. You know, he's a guy that's going to play outside over on the edge, can cover down tight ends, running backs. He's got all that ability, but he really is a safety playing at that linebacker spot.
Yeah, no, Brady's exactly right. I talked to an area scout that said he's not really a linebacker. He's more safety to the next level. That makes me wonder sort of the Isaiah Simmons comparisons. Isaiah Simmons now plays sort of that hybrid role too, and he struggled a little bit. Brady's talked about that before early in the season, and then things started to click, and I think that's the path you have to take with Owusu-Koramoah. You can't expect just to throw him out there and everything to come together for him. Defenses are hard to play, especially when you're playing a hybrid role, especially at the NFL level against players who are all the best players in their high school and college programs for the most part. So that's the transition you have to make, and patience is going to be important. But there's so many things he does well, as Brady talks about, the athleticism, the sort of the physical traits, and just a matter of making him fit into the defense you're trying to run, and making sure you're not putting him out of position, and just making sure you put him in the best position to have that success.
We end with the Chiefs at 32. Ryan has them selecting Jalen Phillips out of Miami. Now, Brady, a couple weeks, what?
Hold on, one question. So, Ryan, you put this together. Do you put together the order as well? Are you just assuming that the Chiefs repeat here? Is that what's happening?
Well, this is draft order based on the current schedules and the strength of schedule and the records.
Okay, so you don't think they're going to repeat is what you're saying?
Right, yeah.
According to this mock draft. Go ahead, Ryan, what?
No, I don't think they're going to repeat. This is just based on the current schedule, on the current rankings based on the strength of schedule.
I was just trying to put you on the spot.
Okay, right. I got you.
According to this mock draft, he has him taking Jalen Phillips. A couple weeks ago, you were saying this is a kid that should not be in the first round. No,
it's not that. It's not that he shouldn't be.
You're very questionable about it.
50 kids who think they're going to be, and there's only 32 picks, so it just doesn't work out that way. Jalen Phillips was a very highly talented recruit going to UCLA. Things didn't work out. He retired. He had some injuries. He had a lot of different things that it took him a while to kind of find his way. And really, he was given the opportunity to excel this year because Greg Russo decided to opt out. But at his size, he's kind of a tweener because I don't know that I see him really dropping back into space quite as much as an outside linebacker player off the edge. He is impactful and he gives great effort and has great skill and ability as a rusher, but he's a bit undersized. And so that's more of my concern is when you look at his impact on the game, you see all the things that people will like about him as far as the effort, his impact at times, him really playing the run and pass well. But he's kind of that tweener player for me as far as the size and fit as to what you want to do on a defense. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have the talent to be a first-round pick. It's just a matter of whether or not a team sees him kind of fitting into a specific role. And I think it's kind of hard to do based on his size and what he will eventually be once he gets to the next level.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That is Brady Quinn. That is Ryan Wilson. And this is Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, 27th or 32. I'm trying to think. I guess you liked Nick Bolton. You didn't love Jeremiah Coramoa. You did a little bit.
No, I like the spot.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, he's going to the Packers, not going to the Jaguars, though.
All right. That's it for now on CBS Sports HQ. We have much more coming up here on the show. Again, Brady Quinn, Amanda Guerra. Have a great day. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.